Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks provides unique mentoring opportunities to enhance your modeling skills by connecting with talented modelers and manufacturers from around the globe who generously share their knowledge and artistic expertise. Build your confidence, refine modeling techniques, and share your projects with a supportive community of fellow modelers, all while enjoying the world's most rewarding hobby. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom and YouTube for our free live program. Missed a program? No problem. Individual show segments are uploaded to YouTube for convenient on-demand viewing. Be sure to connect with the New Tracks community by joining the New Tracks Facebook page where you can interact with other modelers and see what they are modeling. Visit our website at www.newtracksmodeling.com, where you'll find information about upcoming events and the latest issue of our monthly newsletter, Observations. And now, here is the host of New Tracks Modeling, Tom Farrell.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to New Tracks Modeling, the live Zoom and YouTube show that airs every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Here you can find experienced mentors that guide modelers in honing their craft and New Tracks Modeling was founded by Jim Kello with the goal of fostering a supportive and educational community for model railroad enthusiasts. Before we begin tonight's program, I want to take a moment to hear from our show's sponsor, Brennan's Model Railroad.
Tonight's New Tracks Modeling Meetup is sponsored by Brennan's Model Railroading. For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products focused on the O-scale market. Their flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. The prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, Brennan's has developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Brennan's also has craftsman kits that anyone can build. The complete photographically illustrated instructions assume you've never done this before, and explain in step-by-step detail how to create an outstanding model. The Frank Ellison Tribute series of kits are amazing additions to any layout. These kits take Frank Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level using modern methods and materials with Dennis Brennan's additional details and amazing instructions. See the complete line of products on the Brennan's Model Railroading website. Use the QR code to visit.
I want to personally thank Dennis Brennan, Brennan's Model Railroading, for sponsoring the show. We don't have a lot of expenses, but which ones we do, they're covered by people like Brennan's Model Railroading. Before we have a great program lined up tonight, but before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to highlight our My Build segment. We have a new video, and following the video will be Chris' course.
Don't miss the monthly New Tracks Modeling My Build event. My Build is where the modelers of New Tracks show what they have been building. See amazing modeling with some My Builds featuring specific topics for modeling. If you would like to have your models included in the My Build, please email your modeling photos to Chris Course at railrunner130@hotmail.com. If you are a first-time My Build participant, please include a photo of yourself.
Chris, I'd like you to say a few words on the upcoming show and the scheduled shows about 3-4 months out.
Thanks, Tom.
Hold on one moment. There you go.
All right. The next upcoming My Build, the challenge is kit bashes and scratch builds. That's February 26th. To participate, email your photos to me, railrunner130@hotmail.com by February 23rd. That way we can compile everything. And we do have some future themes and dates for shows. March 26th will be a free-for-all. April 23rd will be automation and animation, basically make it move. And then May 28th will be another free fall, and we'll start the elections for show themes for the upcoming year. I think that worked out very well this year, and I'd like to see that continue. That way, it gives the viewer a little bit more control over the challengers. And in June, it will be the water, because we're heading into summer. So waterfronts, bridges, boats, those sorts of things. And of course, anything that you can think of that would fit into each of those categories would be welcomed. So please, again, email me your photos, and we'll get those on the show for you. Also, if you have ideas for upcoming for the next year, nominations for the upcoming My Build challenges, please email those to me as well. And I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chris. And the My Build segment of our show is one of the most popular because it's actually features the users and the viewers and the people that watch the show. So encourage you to participate in that. And now I'd like to go over this evening's program, show you what's on store for this evening. First up, we're going to have Scratch Building Engine House by Young. This is a O scale, full O scale model that I believe he said is 32 inches in length. It's quite the model, and I've seen the slides. It's absolutely stunning. Next up, we have Paul Reeves, who's going to show another scratch build of a I believe it's a lumber mill, and it also is rather breathtaking. There's a great high-level modeling there. And then we have a new presenter, Andy Root, who recently attended the Micro Madness show. Andy and I drove from Indianapolis all the way to Ransom, West Virginia together. So I'm not, and he's going to show a Mack rail bus in ON18 and ON30, two different both scratch builds. And then our Phil Edholm will finish up part 4 of his NMRA contest winner. This incorporates 3D printing and a unique application of acrylic within the model. This is the final part. And then we have Scott Eastburn, another new presenter. He's going to part 1 of 2 of an ON30 scratch build on a narrow gauge work train. It's another beautiful model. So we got a lot of scratch builders on board this evening. Steve Sherill and Gary Cassidy are going to highlight the narrow-minded, focused on narrow gauge segment tonight. He's going to show youth and model railroading. And finally, we'll have the closing and a Caboose, which features yet another layout from the Pittsburgh Narrow Gauge Convention, the DARE layout. We featured this, some of this a couple months ago, but this will be the complete DARE layouts. Where do you see that? So before we get to our first segment, our own Pat Rivard, I would like to ask you to watch this scholarship video and consider making a donation.
Are you a model railroader going to college in academic year 2025-26? If you are pursuing a STEAM degree, apply for the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship. For the 2025-26 academic year, 3 $2,000 scholarships will be available. You can apply online at the QR code shown or on the New Tracks Modeling website. Model railroaders can support the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship, the only national scholarships for model railroaders from a nonprofit organization. Donate online on Zephy. All donations are tax deductible.
And now I'd like to begin the show with Pat Rivard, Scratch Building and Engine House. And all I have to say is this is quite the model. And excited to have Pat present it. Pat is part of our technical support and a modeler. So Pat, Have at it.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it very much. This model is completely scratch built from the bottom up. So I thought I'd give this to you tonight, and hopefully I don't put you to sleep in doing it. So everybody can see this all right. This is the first machine that I used. For many years, I've had this thing, about 25, 30 years, and it's a Dremel table saw. And this machine did all the work for cutting as fine as I needed to get to put the work to the wood to the model itself. I converted the machine over to a better sawdust pickup by adding a piece of cardboard along the back side of the table saw and a hole for the vacuum to hook to it. And I also raised the fence by adding this piece of wood along here. This is quite the machine. I've always enjoyed working with it to do fine work. And one of the bad things that the Dremel table saw had was that this hole right here used to be pretty wide and pretty deep. So I added a piece of plastic to it, as I did years ago. I added this piece of plastic to prevent any of the small pieces of wood like this from sliding down inside between the blade and the hole itself. It becomes very dangerous.
Cursor, but
Pardon me?
we're not seeing your cursor.
Can you see it there now?
No.
Oh, just a minute. Oh. Anyway, if you look at where the saw blade is, there's a piece of plastic that's running on the hole that the saw blade is in. I put that there to prevent any kind of small pieces of wood that you see there now from sliding in between the blade and the hole in the table saw. This here is the laying the sheeting on the. I used foam core board, and it's got like a plastic sheeting on either side of it, almost like plastic, and it's very shiny. So what I did to prevent any problems with it, I sanded it lightly and sprayed it with a top coat of gray primer. And this prevented the glue, or gave the glue something to bite to when you're adding the pieces of wood to it. And here you can see the size of strips that I used between the windows and the doors. And there's quite a few of them along here. As you can see, it took a lot of, it almost drove me crazy. Let's put it that way. I'm already there anyway, so I don't worry about it too much. Anyway, as you can see, every one of these pieces are individual, and I glued them all along, both all the way to the top of the board itself. Here you see a larger view of the foam core board, and I'm applying all the wood to it. And I used a carpenter's glue, a yellow carpenter's glue, to glue the boards to the foam core board. And you can see some of the equipment that I used here was the regular carpenter's knife and squares. And you can see a lot of the leftover pieces I have from cutting and fitting. Here's some of the weights that I use. Those are lead shots that they use for making bullets with. All these lead shots are heavy enough that it would hold down the boards that I placed on for the sheeting. And this here wall you see in front of you has got the 2 engine house doors that I had. Just for information, this engine house is 8.5 inches high, so you can consider the height of those doors are pretty high. And the width of this whole thing is over 17 inches. So that there is about the width of that wall you see with the doors in it, the doorways. And the length of the building is actually 33.25 inches long. And overall, there are 28 windows. Here you can see one of the side walls that go along the back of the unit. And if you look at the very edge of that wall, you'll see that some of this stuff is set out a little bit, so that it's longer than the wall itself. And the reason why I did that was so when I put the walls together, they would fit tightly and I wouldn't see any seams at the edges and the corners. And you can see the lumber that I cut with that table saw. There was a lot of pieces went on there. Here, you see the base of the unit. You'll see the rail there just below those walls. You can see the rail, it's embedded into the foam core board. So in order to strengthen the foam core board from flexing too much, I laid a piece of bristle board underneath the whole base of it and glued it on. So it strengthened the base. And you can also see some more of the lumber that I was cutting. And if you look closely at one of the walls, you can see the edges of the wall are higher or longer, and that's for the corners. Now on the inside, after all the lumber was applied for the sheeting, I painted it with a off-white from Floqual that I had left. I had several bottles of it, so I used it all up. And I painted all the walls inside with a white, off-white finish. And I wanted it to look rough. That's why you see some of the grooves of or some of these spaces between the sheeting is not fully tight together. Then you can see the studding that I cut for between the bottom and top of the walls. And I use this here silicone container to put my glue in. It doesn't stick to it at all. And I use the pointed pen here to apply the glue to the edges of the 2x4 or the studding that I put in there. And of course I used the tweezers too. Now I needed a place to hang all the rafters since there was about 32 of them. And I found I just used the pegs on this, on my, for hangers, and I just applied each one of them to the pegs to hold them up. And there they all are on the bench that I was working on, a table itself. And there's some plastic strips and some more of the wood strips that I use, some of the rafters and the walls. Here you can see an overall view of the walls after they were finished. In between each one of the stud work, or the wall studs that I put in, I made sure that I had cross bridging so that it strengthened the walls itself. And then of course I painted all the stud work the same color as the sheeting. And you can see on the ends of the walls that overlay that I had. There's a clearer view. On top of the walls, you can see that I used a heavy 4x4, or what you would call a 4x4, along the top and bottom to strengthen the ends and the tops. Feel free to ask me a question if you like, if I'm going too fast. Along the top of the wall, you can see the overlay that I had on the outside wall to come up above and below. And all this was done so that when I added anything to it, it fit tightly and you couldn't see any seams. There's the outside of the wall. That's where I used this, it's almost like wallpaper. And they call it bumpy paper. And I also used a sticky blockwork foundation to the bottom of the walls. Got it upside down here. The door is upside down. And then I used along between the blockwork and the paper that I used, the bumpy paper, I used the plastic strip. And that's your, what you call it, the sill between the stonework and your blockwork. That's to make it more presentable as the fact that that's what you do when you put in stonework. It's usually on a sill. Now here you see what I did with it all after I had it painted and finished on the inside. I weathered it with a black powder mixed with some alcohol. And I just applied it with a stiff brush, and where it was too much, I would take a cloth and I would rub out the extra in between the studding. So it makes it look like it has a lot of smoke collected. Then the bottom half of the wall, I used a gray color, a darker gray color, bluish gray color. And that's something like what I saw in some roundhouses that I built or saw in real life. They kept the bottom part a dark color and the top part, the white color, was to keep it lighter inside. Above this, above that wall, you'll see some of the lumber I used. It was mainly basswood and mixtures of cedar and redwood. And another picture of it. Turn the right side up.
Pat, I have a question.
Go ahead, Steve.
I see you put the windows in from very early on in the build. What was your reasoning behind that? And did that cause any real problems when you went to stain the inside? I assume that they were custom made. You made those windows yourself?
The windows, no, they're from Tichy.
It's from Tichy, okay.
Yeah. No, I covered them with tape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Pat, I got a question.
Excuse me, I didn't put the plastic in right away. I kind of covered them with tape and then I just painted it all.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry.
Pat, I have a question about the exterior. The paper that you use, you call it a bumpy paper?
Yeah, it's like a wallpaper that's sold from a place in Czechoslovakia.
Was it embossed with the bricks on there?
It's embossed with the stonework, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you feel it, you almost think every individual one is there. It's a beautiful paper. It does a nice job. They got it well done.
I've used the same stuff on my railroad also.
It's amazing stuff. Yep.
It takes a while to get it, but
yeah. And I found to apply this paper to the foam core board, I roughed it a little bit on the foam core board. I kind of sanded it lightly. And then I used a water-based contact cement. And when that baby went on there, it was done. So I used to put it on a little larger than what I needed, and then I would trim it with my carpenter's knife.
Who's the manufacturer of that paper?
I don't know. If you go to Etsy online, ETSY, I think it is.
Okay.
And you'll find it.
Just under bumpy paper.
Pardon me?
This is Andy. If you don't find it on Etsy, go to eBay.
Yeah.
I looked at that.
I got a better price on Etsy than I did on eBay.
Okay, I couldn't find it on Etsy.
There's a sheet of it right there. That's the full size of the sheet. So I had to work with what I had, and I kind of joined it together, and you'll see what I did at the joints. This here particular wall, you can really see that small wall that I have there, the overlay of the sheets on the outside, so that when you put it together, you wouldn't see any joints when you join the walls together. And that particular hole in that wall is the entrance of the to the shop, the machine shop in that building. And there's one large door that goes on that on the outside. And of course, I built a deck inside and outside. There's the pits. Boy, that's the pits. Anyway, those two pits were already in my layout. There's actually 4 of these units that you see here, 4 units like that. And I had them in there for several years, and I had the base already cut for them with the track work, but I didn't have the rest of the building built. And you can see them here, they're all lit up. Here's the flooring inside the engine house. It's a mixture of cedar, redwood, and basswood. And I stained them lightly with a light brown stain, just to give it that, like it blended together well. You can see where I used those lead weights to hold that flooring tight together when I glued it in place. And the big secret to work with foam core board, I found you have to sand it. Otherwise, you very lightly so that your glues will stick properly. You see here where I've been using a piece of sandpaper just to make sure they're kind of even. You don't want them too high or anything like that. You want them fairly even at the joints. So I used that. And you can see where the track was embedded in that foam core board. That's the foam core board. There's your track embedded in that foam core board. But you can see how I had to hold that stuff pretty tight. There's the finished floor. Yeah, it didn't turn out too bad, I thought, anyway. But you see, there's the 4 holes for the pits. Another picture. And if you look closely, you'll see the nail holes at the ends of the joints on every one of these. Every board has a nail hole at the end of the boards.
How long did you make the boards?
Some of them were, I don't know, about 10 inches, 12 inches, 6 inches. It all depended on how it worked out. I tried to make it so that it would, you know, flow along. And I never tried to make the joints at the same spot, because that's normally the way you do flooring. And you don't want it at the same spot because it strengthens the floor if you go beyond those joints. And you can see some of the wiring I had going down the side of the end and corner of the wall at the very end. And there's the end wall. And you can really see the nail joints or the nail holes right there.
Hey, Pat, Tom Farrell here. You've got quite a few slides to go, and we're out of time. Let's do this part 2 next week.
Yeah, sure.
Fair enough.
Yep. Okay, fellas, we're going to cut her short.
We're actually long.
Or long, whatever.
Okay, we'll finish it up next week. So the next presentation is Paul Reeves. This is News and Views O-Scale, where Dennis Brennan normally handles the segment, but Paul is kind enough to present a scratch build of his own, building with coffee sticks. So Paul, welcome to the show, and appreciate you being on this evening.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Dennis allowing me to sit in for him while he's in Florida this week. I have not had that much experience with scratch building until the last 5 or 6 years. I bought a kit company, and we do O-Scale kits at Kershaw Craftsman Kits. But anyway, I moved my layout, which I loved, had to come down. And about 2 years ago, I was bored, needed something to do. So I came across these packages of coffee stirrers. You've seen them. And I thought, you know, there ought to be something I could do with this. So I started this project. I wanted to build a sawmill, mainly I had a lead on some 3D printed sawmill machinery that I thought was economical compared to what was on sale at the time. And so this is all non-scale lumber, if you will. I went to the local hobby store and just bought what looked like to me would be the right kind of wood. But what really made this project doable was I found a Midwest Products 1134 cutter. And with the angle guards on it, you could cut pieces, the same pieces over and over again. It just made it really easy. And I really kind of designed the sawmill as I went along. So that's the cutter on the screen right there.
Oh, we're not seeing it.
You have to share.
Okay, sorry. Okay, is that it? All right. Can you see that?
No, you're not sharing yet.
Okay.
You gotta click on your screen there. There you go.
Okay, thanks. Okay, let me go back and show you the cutter. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. This came from Midwest Products. Super good piece of equipment to have. I also noticed in the last couple of years that the big box stores have been carrying some of these too, but this thing is bulletproof, and the company's great to deal with. I don't have any share of Midwest Products. All right, this is what came to be. The mill is about 30 inches long, and I based it on the design of the McLean lumber or sawmill in Canada. I found some photographs of that. By the way, it's very, very, it's not exactly specific, but if you see on the photograph to the far left, those are the coffee stirrers that I glued using white glue to an underlayment, and those were spaced about every scale, 24 inches. And you can see on the right there where my that first picture, you can see some of the boards that have the foundation for the floor. The middle picture shows where the logs would come into the mill. There's the log carriage there is on the right. The logs would be rolled down and then attached to the carriage, and you can see the saw toward the center of the photograph. The 3D printed pieces allowed for a dead roll system and a live roll system and a cutoff saw. The thing though that I thought, as you can see, the coffee stirrers, I stained those after I had secured those to the underlayment, because I didn't really think it was stupid. I didn't really think about it. But I used hunter line stains, and sometimes I would use the stain out of the bottle. Oftentimes I would mix 2 or 3 together. There was no rhyme or reason. I left some gaps, and also some gaps formed because the wood actually sort of contracted a little bit. So, but I wanted to have space for these rolls because they look so realistic. What also made this kind of cool was Crow River has a drive shaft components involving hangers, couplings, pillow blocks, and I incorporated those. Again, I don't know if this is the way it looked or not. I had nothing to go by. I just kind of, developed what I thought was realistic looking. Crow River products, these pulleys and sheaves are shown here. This photograph would show the area where you would put the steam, the boiler for the steam, and where that would start the power process. I don't have that built yet. Crow has a really nice steam drive set, including a brick encased boiler. Looks really nice. I have not done one, but I've seen some that have been modeled and they're really good. But this, the pulley here would be the main drive, and you can see the pillow blocks and the couplings to your right. And they went throughout the structure to pretend that there was a drive system. You're looking at the left side of the mill. The live rolls and dead rolls are on the opposite side. And as you get down, you can see some of the roof. I left that open just for display. Again, I just used stirs. When I needed longer pieces, I just used, I don't know who the manufacturer was I got at the hobby store. They were all loose pieces. And as you can see here, I also went back and put in some more secure piece, a secure framework, because I really wanted the mill to look like it kind of evolved. I wanted to look like that they didn't really give a rip about how it looked. They just needed it for it to function. And so that was sort of the idea behind this. This photograph shows the log carriage. Also, that column right there in front of you, I put some white paint, very, very thin white paint along some of the columns to weather them, and that turned out pretty well. Basically, the columns along the right side of the picture are glued in between 2 pieces of strip wood that run the width of the floor. On the other side is the same configuration, and you can make as many of those as you want to. I just kept laying those out and putting in the coffee stirrers, and you can get as much length or as least amount as you want to. I think I'd also point out here, and this is maybe not the best picture to show it, but I really found that my son is a war gamer and is in Warhammer and does all these really intricate figures that he paints, and he uses Citadel paints. Those paints applied or I guess stuck to the 3D printed models as best as anything I'd ever had. They have a lot of weird names. You won't find a umber, you have some kind of flesh color. But if you can find the right color, they really go on well. A little bit expensive, but for this project, it allowed me to do a lot with the 3D without having to go back and paint it again. One coat was enough, and then I weathered it using some stains and some powders. But the Citadel paints were really a huge help this. The picture on your left here, again, shows the log carriage. There's a double blade saw. To the left of the saw, you can see a drive and a pulley and a belt. The belt is made from vellum paper. Just cut it in strips. I super glued one end of the strip to the pulley, wrapped it around the other, came back, and then put a dab of super glue on that. And you can see in the middle picture, it came out pretty well. If you look close, you might see the gap or the overlay, but you have to kind of look close. The saws, I mean, it's very detailed 3D printed product. Again, you can see some of the rustic wood around that, and the drive shaft is at the top of the center picture. On the far right side is the winch that pulls the logs in from the outside. That winch, there's no drive belt there, it's missing. I have no idea what happened to the drive belt. That was a real piece of work to get the drive belt to work there, because you had to, I don't plan well, so I had to go back and put the belts in later. That winch, again, according to the McLean Sawmill history, came off a steamship, and apparently was a pretty powerful winch. There's an operator stand right beside it, right behind it, that you can't see very well. But again, the coffee stirrers, because they're not perfect, left, in my opinion, very prototypical gaps. Again, it was my intent to show that this was a business. They wanted to make money, and the way the floor looked wasn't the most important thing to the owner. There are nail holes in this. I think you could see, and maybe I used a pounce wheel to go across those, again, before I stained them, but after I put them in. Sometimes the nails got a little crooked, and it looks like somebody who was intoxicated had put those nails in. So the center picture, once the logs prototypically went through the blade, the live rolls were right behind, or down the assembly way. You can see those in the left picture. On the very left side of the left picture, you can see the dead rolls, and you can see the other rolls down below that. Again, the wood, the strips and the columns are all just wood from the hobby store. One thing that made this easy to do is, you can see on the left-hand side, there's 3 columns, and you can see that this is the bed for the logs that come in. But being able to sandwich those pieces in between the two pieces of strip wood, really made for a sturdy structure. But also, you can see you can make as many of those as you want to. Then you would have the columns that would be in between that, and again, you can make as big a meal as you want it to make. These photographs show some of how the wood looks weathered. You can see the nail holes in the center picture, and also you can see the side. I had no walls for the outside. I looked at the photographs. Some sawmills had some walls, but most appeared to be mostly open, and that's what I tried to do here. You can see there's some extra lumber in the left picture. Again, when I found I had to secure something that didn't fit right, I just added more lumber. Again, hoping to make just a configuration that they built this thing as they went along. I like the way the center picture turned out with the gaps in the floor. I'm pretty sure OSHA wouldn't approve of that today, but they were there. The picture on the far right, excuse me, shows the dead rolls, and the live rolls are further down on the further side. The vellum, the drive belt goes to the cutoff saw. It's in the very top middle of the photograph on the far right side. And the 3D components actually, when you push them together, it looks like the drive shaft connects all of those going all the way down. Very realistic looking.
Hey, Paul,
Yeah,
last minute or two here. Let's see if our viewers have any questions for you.
absolutely, sure.
Hey, Paul, this is Bob Gelmacher. Where did you find the 3D prints for the sawmill?
When Shapeways was in business, I found a 187 HO scale. I contacted the owner of the pieces, and he upscaled it. And his name is Dan Von Aker. Shapeways went out of business, as you know, but this was the entire O scale machinery was less than $200. I got enough for the whole mill. And the pieces were very well done. There was not having a whole lot of work to do. All I did was wash them and paint them.
You know how to spell Dan's last name?
It's Vanakker. He and I talked. I'm trying to get him. We're trying to work out a deal. Well, I'm going to ask him if he will allow me to, sell those through my website, because they really are very well done.
Okay.
We just haven't made that agreement yet. But he's a super nice guy. And he gave me the ultimate compliment. He said he showed a photograph of this to his wife, and she thought it was one of the ones he had actually taken to the real McLean mill. So that was a really nice compliment.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Paul. That's an excellent model and really stunning. We're going to feature Paul down the road and do a little promotion of his company. Before we begin the next presentation, first-time performer Andy Root, we're going to show our Facebook promotion, our New Tracks Facebook video.
Does it seem like eternity waiting for the next Wednesday night and a New Tracks event? Now there is hope. The New Tracks Modeling Facebook page gets you into the New Tracks community 24/7. Post, respond, and converse with over 1,200 avid model railroaders on Facebook. Show your modeling, ask questions, and help others. Join now, it is free and easy. Use the link or QR code to open the Facebook page.
Next up, we have a new presenter, Andy Root, and he's going to show us how he scratch built a Mack rail bus in both ON18 and ON30. So Andy, welcome to New Tracks Live.
Thanks for having me on, Tom. Appreciate it.
Phil, I think you're going to run the video. Phil. There we go.
Okay. Okay, this all started from my trip with Tom out to the Micro Madness meet in Ransom. I had my layout parked right next to Les Davis, so I got to talking to him about his Mack rail bus. So I ended up with one. And this photo is finished. It still doesn't have the windows in it or weathered yet, but it's up and running. It's presentable. This is all the pieces. It uses a Stan Schultz N20 hyperdrive. The front truck is just standard HO. I did use a real short wheelbase truck. I had printed up myself. So my initial plan was to make this a production feasible chassis, but I just started with a styrene and scratch built the bottom of it. And this is just showing the very bottom plate after I traced it out and got it cut out. And then there I got it marked out for the hole for the hyperdrive, and then the front mark is where the front truck will fit attached on. And this is after I braced it all up with square stock. I put the hyperdrive in, depending on how you set it, it kind of floats. So I just glued it in with some E6000, I believe it's called. Seemed to work pretty good. Got the front truck put on. And this just shows the bottom side of it. I ended up using phosphorus bronze wire for my contacts on the rear wheels. And this is just another photo of it. Looks like I could have dusted it off a little. And that's just a photo of it after I put it in its first coat of primer. And then these are photos of it mocked up on the track. You can see the front truck that I printed. It's in white ABS plastic. And just another view of it from the back. And another. And this is my first coat of yellow. I decided I wanted to do a two-tone paint job on it. And then after I got it all built, I put it all in CAD. I've got 46 years in mold design business, so I'm pretty decent at CAD. So I drew this all up in Fusion 360. And that's the first one off the printer. Printed this in ABS on a resin printer. And there you can see where I've got the phosphorus bronze wires mounted into it right on the truck rear wheels. And this is a finish of it, picture of it finished, painted. No weathering yet though. Had a lot of fun painting all the Coke bottles and everything on the roof. Okay, this should be the last photo of this. Okay, the next one is a 0-18 version that I collaborated with Les on. On my layout, I have a real narrow trestle. So he made me a version that's only about 1 1/8 wide, so it'll run through my trestle. This is a photo of it finished. It uses the same old tried and true 11-109 Cato drive. Man, those things are bulletproof, and you can use them for just about anything. They're great units. On this one, I elected to just go ahead and design a plate up for it in CAD right off the bat, because I figured it was just as easy for me to do that as it was to try and build an initial one out of ABS. So after I got it put together, I wanted to put a front truck on it, and I had to do a lot of trial and error there. So I ended up making it like a pilot on a steam engine, so it pivots. And I just made that out of a piece of styrene temporarily. And you can see where I added on to my 3D print, because I had to modify it and slide the Cato drive all the way to the back of the chassis in order to put the truck on the front of it. That's just an N-scale truck off an old Bachmann car of some sort. There you can see it all put together and setting in the body, and you can see my gap in front of my chassis there where I slid the chassis all the way back. And this is my first initial run of it. After I tried it without putting the swing arm on the front, and I kind of figured it would not go around the track because it's just didn't have enough flex. I tried slotting the front truck to let it slide side by side. That didn't do it. So then I elected to put the swing arm on the front pilot. I guess that's what I'll call it. And then this is after I finished it, I went with the same two-tone paint, only the other one's blue. And I did this one in green, and I've yet to put windows or weather this one either. And so this is that. So these chassis, I will be 3D printing those, and they'll be available for anybody that wants to build one of these. You can get the shells from Les Davis. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Andy, what was the most difficult part of which was one harder than the other, the 018 versus the 0N30?
The 0 and 30 was pretty straightforward to what I needed to do with it. Now the 0 and 18, getting that front truck mounted upright and working was the most challenge, but now I got that figured out. They're both pretty simple, really.
And you, I know you have a laser cutter, I know you have a resin printer, and I know you have the filament printer.
Yes.
Did you, everything on this was, these two were, well, the one that you did 3D printing on, was that was resin alone, or, yeah?
Yeah, these were both resin printed, but I could probably do them in FDM on a filament printer also, I imagine, just as well. So I'll probably have all this finished up this week so it can all be.
What was the approximate cost of the two drives, the hyperdrive and the Cato drive, just approximate?
The hyperdrives from are about $79. The Catos, I buy those off the internet for probably $25 by the time they're here. They come from Japan, so you have to wait for a while. It takes a couple of weeks to get one. But I'm not sure what Les's costs were on the shells yet. These are like the first two that he's made, so these were prototypes.
Seems to me that the Cato drive looks higher quality than the other one, or is that not the case? They both basically the same quality. They both run the same.
Yeah, I mean the Catos are just, for the money you can't beat them. They're just bulletproof.
Yeah.
Now the other one from Stan, it's a nice piece. It's all metal. There is no plastic in that thing. So it's a really nice piece too. And they make those drives, and you can get them in different RPMs, all the way from like, I think 15 up to 100 RPMs a minute. So depending on what you want.
And then finally, what is the CAD system you use for your operation?
I use Fusion 360 is what I'm using. And then I'm printing with Anacubic printers.
Okay. Well, thank you as being
wait a second here.
Yeah.
Andy, what gear ratio did you have on the when you bought the N20 motors?
You know, I don't know what these are that I got from Stan. I have since found them, and just the drive units without the wheels. And I've found they come in all these different ones.
Right.
Clem had some out there at the meet in Ransom, and he had some that were pretty slow. So I'm going to guess they were, around 20 revolutions per minute.
Okay.
Because he's also selling them too.
Yeah, I bought some off of eBay, and like I said, there's like 4 or 5 different ratios you can get and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, it's just finding the right wheel sets to put on them.
Right. Yeah, I've got a project I'm doing for a customer who he is a HO scale Grant Line GE 25 ton that I took out the Grant Line motor that was from that huge motor they had in their open frame motor that Grantline put in there, and using the N20 system so I can put room for DCC and stuff like this in it.
Right, you can get those N20s in right angle, or you can get them with a straight through like a slot car motor.
Right, exactly. They're pretty cool, and they're really quiet when they run too. I was pretty amazed.
I can see where there's a lot of uses for those things. I just haven't really
Absolutely.
sat down and thought about it yet.
Yeah, I'm personally an O-scale modeler, and there's a guy that I got a Wickham that's 3D printed, and there's a guy on the P48 list that used 2 of those N20 motors to drive one in O-scale.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, they're pretty cool. All right, thanks.
Thank you again, Andy. And
thank you.
Before we begin our next segment, which is our very own Phil Edholm, I'd like to present the New Tracks Live donation video.
Do you enjoy New Tracks modeling? You can help support New Tracks in many ways, but donating to support the show and other activities is really appreciated. This helps pay for the expenses of producing the show, including Zoom, website, and emailing costs. You can support New Tracks financially in 3 ways. First, you can make direct contributions through Patreon. With Patreon, you can make a single or monthly contribution to New Tracks. You can also contribute through YouTube by using super stickers and super chats to donate. Finally, when you watch a YouTube replay, letting the ads run will increase the payout to New Tracks. Thank you for supporting New Tracks modeling.
Well, if you enjoy the show, don't hesitate to make a donation. Again, our expenses are low, but we do have expenses. Next up, we have our very own Phil Edholm. This is his final segment in his scratch building a NMRA contest winner, national winner. He utilized 3D printing and acrylic. So I think we're going to get into the acrylic part tonight. Is that right, Phil?
No, actually, we're going to finish the 3D part. We actually did the acrylic part earlier. It was fairly short there earlier. So what I'm going to do, we ended last time with talking a little bit about the roof. So, I got done building the building, started looking at doing the roof. And what I came to the conclusion was you could do a roof as a series of pieces. So if you look here up the upper right, that's actually one piece. That would be one of the back pieces on the sides. The front, actually, if you look at it, is actually 5 or 6 pieces. So there are 2 big pieces, and then there are the 2 angle pieces of the main roof, then the 2 angle pieces of the subroof. And those were all aligned so where they join up, they would line up and could be glued together. So in the end, the roof all glued up. You're seeing it being clipped together and glued there at the bottom. The roof was finished basically the same way as the rest of the building. That was done using again the caramel paint and dry brushing, and these were just some assembly photos of it. You see on the right side there, the ceiling on it. The ceiling was done using the Northeastern O siding. So Northeastern sells 2 kinds of O siding. They sell a corrugated siding and a wider banded siding. So the way the siding was done is you cut the siding into pieces. You see that being done at the upper right using a square and cutting them into specific pieces. I think these were 10 by 3 or 10 by 4. Then those are secured to a piece of wood with some masking tape, painted with fairly light gray primer. I looked around and found light gray primer. You kind of see that on the sawhorse, they're all being painted. And then using Dr. Ben's rust, put rust on them. And the beauty is this way you can rust them individually and at one end only. If you try to do it after the roof's done, you get something that doesn't look very natural because rust doesn't rust in splotches on the roof, and it rusts on individual boards. So that's basically the way the roof was put together. Then at the edge of that, put in a trim board because that actually, from the side, you don't see any of the 3D printed pieces underneath it. So just very simply dry brushed it, then added in the siding. One of the things is the non-corrugated, the other siding, which is I can't remember the name of it now. Actually take that siding and cut it, and it has a single groove. It has grooves that are about 9-10 inches apart in O scale. And if you cut on either side of those, you can get a piece that can be bent. And so that's actually what you see there is the valleys. So the valleys get installed and then the corrugated, and they just get glued on. I used pretty much canopy glue for this exclusively. Glued them on, just held them down with weights as they glued on. You can see that I did all this assembly work on that acrylic structure that I originally built. So it actually became a framework to put those things together. So this is kind of some views of the roof. And then again, using that seam siding as the top on the roof, as the top corner there. So just a couple of other pictures here of things. What's going on here? There we go. Oh, my slides jumped on me there. I'm having jumping problems here. So just a couple of views. You see the lower left, the interior truss hasn't been put in place. So you don't see you see the hole there for the truss, but you actually don't see the truss. So the next thing was the doors. So I have to admit, on the doors, the smaller doors for the building that were fixed doors, I actually kind of wussed out on that. I wimped out. Instead of trying to make them as hung doors that actually would open in and out, I actually made them fixed. So those were actually built just as individual pieces of wood glued to the angled supports, some brass wire for hinges, and just glued in place. The reason was I found after I built the previous building and had the removable doors, when I took it off the layout and put it in a box, I ended up having to reattach half the doors, and I figured having all these doors to reattach would be a bit much. But for the back of the building, I decided to do sliding doors. And the reason for that, obviously, is the track is very close to the building. There's not really a loading dock. There's not really a place for swinging doors. And inside the building, there's a fairly narrow platform that's at the raised elevation of the rail cars. And so having a swing-in door really wouldn't work very well. So what you see at the left are the pieces. The way that was done was actually building a carrier, which was printed as 1 millimeter thick printing on an FDM filament printer. Then printing it on the upper piece there, you can see as a slider where the doors were going to slide in, and then the doors were covered with wood and trim. So basically, this is how the pieces came together. You can kind of see that channel at the top had holes in it. If you look on the bottom there, bottom right, you can see each of the doors has 2 little pieces molded in the top that have a hole through them. I was at my local hobby shop, and in the model airplane part of the hobby shop, they had some carbon fiber rods that they use in model airplanes. And I found if you actually use those as the slider for this versus a brass rod, the doors slide amazingly smoothly. So what you kind of see is the bottom, the inside. Again, these were finished, stained, and then dry brush painted. The next thing I had to do was this was a sugar warehouse, so I needed to put some sugar cubes, some sugar sacks in it. So I decided to do that by taking the Grant Line sugar sacks. They have a package of these, and actually molding a lot of sugar bags. I think I molded, if you see the bag up there on the upper right and the left photo on the right of it, I think I probably molded about 1,000 or 2,000 sugar sacks. And the idea was that those would be glued onto this frame that was 3D printed as a couple of pieces. So instead of trying to build everything as sugar sacks, kind of built a framework to cover it. As I built this, what I realized was I hadn't anticipated how you get sacks onto the top of it. So what I did was added on a ramp where you could actually load the sugar stacks up on it. And then I realized that doing the sides was going to be a challenge. So what I did was bought another batch of sugar sacks from Tishy and actually ACC'd those together into a stack, as you see in the upper left, and created again a few molds for that and molded those stacks that go on the sides as individual pieces. So each one of those stack of sacks is actually molded or printed or printed, whatever you want to call it, into a single piece and then added on. So that actually generated what were the sugar sacks inside. So essentially, that's what the building, how the buildings were built. I think I went through everything pretty well. These are some pictures of the inside. You see the sugar sacks after they were all painted and weathered with some weathered primarily with some chalks and some washes to finish them. One of the things I had to do is figure out how to move the sugar stacks up, and since I couldn't find anything in any real good way to do it, came up with the idea of making these wooden plates that you could roll a hand truck up with sugar sacks on it. So you actually have one of the workers rolling a bag of sugar stacks up. Finished the office. The office has some, I think I can't remember whose, there's a desk in there and some chairs and things that I bought. So this is kind of, again, a view, I think you've seen this before, of the overall structure. You can see the sugar stack loading there because they need different pieces depending upon how tall they go. There's an extra piece there. You can see kind of on the floor in the middle. There are some wooden barrels on a 3D printed barrel holder, because clearly you have to have beer for the workers working at the sugar beet refinery. And the stack of pallets actually, or stack of crates there in the kind of middle bottom, are actually being shipped to the sugar processing facility. So just a few kind of more shots of the inside. So I want to close with the final building that I built using kind of these techniques. On this module, there's a wharf that's built based on the Standard Oil wharf that was in Monterey. So in Monterey, they had a big pier that went out, and they actually had kind of off the pier, think about an L going off the pier, they had this Standard Oil wharf. And so I decided I wanted to have a wharf. I wanted to build some of the ships that you can get from Frenchman's River. You can see one there. That was actually one of their ships. What I found was that all the ships, all of the fishing boats out of Monterey had fly bridges. So you can see I've added a fly bridge onto it. It's not painted yet, but kind of coming together in this picture. What I found was there were a huge number of pictures of this pier. These are actually prototype photos. It turns out that most of the folks in Monterey that were fishermen were actually Sicilian, and they would have family days where they would take the family out on the boat. And it turned out the way this pier was, that it was kind of an L. There was an ideal place for a cameraman to set up and take pictures of the boats with the families on them. So that gave me a whole bunch of photos of the prototype to be able to use. So then I used that to design, and you can see from the pictures, it's slightly condensed and compressed, to actually design and build this little building that goes on the pier. Having done the 3D printing on the warehouse and understanding construction techniques, this time I decided to try to make it a little bit more realistic. So if you notice, and the picture really kind of look at is the one on the bottom right, if you notice the walls, there's actually a gap between the studs and the aluminum framing. So if you look at the wall, it actually has 3 different layers, which is what you typically see in construction. There are the vertical studs that support the structure. There are the angled braces that provide the shear strength to the structure. And then there are furring strips that are on the outside of the studs that the vertical siding gets nailed to. So what I actually did was created those as 3 different layers. So when you look down into the building, you actually see that depth between the different pieces. So the way that was done, and then the roof, this is the roof assembly. The roof was actually made again as a series of 3D printed elements, and it can just be picked up off the roof and put back in place. This picture was taken before the lighting was put in that you saw in the previous picture. So the way this was done was, if you look on the upper left, you kind of see all the pieces. So what you have for each wall is you have the actual wall framing, which is the vertical, and then those angles for the shear bracing. Those were printed as a single piece, and then for each wall there was another piece, which you see there, the one the far left. You see those with the horizontal boards. Those were actually printed using the same template, because one of the beauties of designing this stuff in CAD is once you've designed something, you can use that as a template to be able to start another design. So it's really easy to make both of these and make them fit. So essentially those were all finished separate from each other. And you see in kind of the right middle, you see the pieces of the roof. You can see the two pieces that have the joists that run across the roof, and then what's essentially the trusses for the roof. The sign itself was printed as two different pieces and glued together. It turns out when you want to print something in filament printing and you want elevation in it, it's very hard to print something that has detail like that on both sides, because the side that's down to the printer, you have to have supports and it doesn't turn out as well. If you cut those in half, print them as two pieces, then glue them together, you can get that detail on both sides. So essentially those were, just clipped together into a frame. You can see that at the bottom left. You can see as it's glued together. They were painted before they were assembled. You see kind of in the middle there was a light bar designed with some brass rods to hold in place. And at the far right on the bottom, one of the things that I had as a challenge was trying to get the roof built. So I actually designed a little 3D printed cradle that would hold all the roof pieces while they were glued together. The floor was just very simply some boards glued to an underlying frame. No reason to 3D print that. So, looking down at the building, I really like the detail you're able to get in a small structure like this. And I think the lighting actually looks pretty reasonable. It doesn't look like it couldn't exist having been done like that. The light fixtures here are basically 3D printed with just a little micro LED inside, one of those, I don't know, 2060, whatever they are, the very small LEDs. The tools there actually were some produced by the Fast Tracks folks, Mount Albert. They actually produced some laser cut tools that I bought at one of the narrow gauge conventions. What I really like about it is when you look through the windows, it looks very realistic. Looks like it could actually be a real building. Final point of this, for those of you who are looking at this and say, well, I'm in HO, or I want to model something other than a building that has large framing. I actually did some small wall sections. So what I did was I designed in CAD what would be a 2x4 wall section. One of the things you'll notice on this is I actually did this the same way the last building was done. The diagonals that are actually for support were molded into the structure. If I go back, I'm going to go back one slide actually here. Back here, if you notice these on this slide, those diagonals, the shear diagonals, were actually molded on top of the framing. When I printed those were printed on top. So when those printed, they actually print with supports underneath them. One of the things I found is it's really easy to pull those supports off. And because the supports are on the back side of the wood, you don't see anything that supports leaves on the back side of the print. So it actually looks pretty good. These over here were actually done the same way as I did the warehouse. They're actually molded in. But then I actually printed those as O scale and HO scale so these are 2x4 standard 18-inch framing for a wall. And when you print them out, they actually come out pretty good. What you see is on the left there, that's the O scale one. On the right is the HO one. So you can actually do this in HO or O scale. Finally, just a few learnings and regrets. You can make the sections smaller than you think. They actually works pretty well. I'm constantly amazed at how well the 3D printer works. You could actually even cut it down if you had been doing really small sections and use a 0.3 or even a 0.2 nozzle head for your printer. The gray and lighter filament works best for this. It seems to me that the gray has a minimal amount of additives to it and actually prints better than, say, a black or any colored filament. We talked about printing flat, smaller sections down. The hidden supports work good. So if you put the diagonals on top of the wall and print it with those up, they'll get supports underneath them, but they're really easy to pop off. And you never see the backside because it's against the outside of the wall. The side grain works really good for looking like wood. One thing I found as just a hint, if you have something that when it gets done printing is not quite straight, Don't put it in the oven thinking that 135 degrees in the oven will let you smooth it out. If you look in the middle of those parts over on the right there, there's a lot of test prints. The one in the middle there that's kind of wavy, that was actually a roof section that I tried to straighten in the oven. What I have found subsequent to this is that if you have an issue with the print, I 3D printed an O-scale re-railer tool, and the fingers on the re-railer tool were a little off. They weren't quite straight and flat. And what I found is if you get a bucket and put it under really hot water, our hot water heater is pretty reasonably warm, get a bucket of hot water, you put the print in it, just hold it in it so it warms up a little bit, and you can actually straighten out and hold it straight. So hot water is a pretty good way to manipulate a filament print and actually make it better. You will have a lot of prints. I think I probably threw away a kilogram of print material doing this. The filler primer is most important on those visible surfaces. Dry brushing is really important. I think dry brushing is an incredibly important skill to learn for us model railroaders, because it really does let you create that look of partially painted things. The other thing, like I said before, the semi-gloss didn't matter after you dry brush it. So when you go looking for a base color paint, if you can't find a paint in anything except semi-gloss, if you're going to do dry brushing on top of it, you probably don't need to worry about it being glossy. Some changes, I would have liked to rethink the way the base floor mounting was done. Epoxying directly down to the masonite, while it worked, had some disadvantages. The boards on the wall that go below either the 3D print or the acrylic are actually onto the masonite, and that actually became a little bit of a challenge to get that to look right. I think you could be a lot more accurate. I added on 1 millimeter to most of my window dimensions. So most of my windows were tissue windows. I measured them, but when I did in the 3D, in the CAD design, I actually added a little bit of spacing to make sure things would fit. The reality is that those windows are exact. They're all exactly the same. And the 3D print is almost exactly the same. So you can be very accurate and have things fit very tight if you want to. I would have made the roof members smaller. When I got done with it, I thought they were a little large. But quite frankly, the level of effort to go back and redo that in the CAD system I was using was going to be fairly large, since it was actually, in the end, was about 12 different parts. I would have liked to have a little bit better way of doing the wiring. The trusses that have the lights in them are not removable. They're actually soldered together and kind of daisy chained. It would have been nice to figure out how to put those on a plug and make them removable. So if you really wanted to do things in the interior, you could. On the other hand, you can remove about half of the trusses, so that lets you get into the inside if you need to re-glue things down that break off, etc. And the last thing is I probably would either reprint the gusset plates that I did in 1 millimeter instead. I think I used 1.2 or 0.12 millimeter height, or actually do them in resin. So that brings me to the end of how those buildings were built. So back to you, Tom.
Oh, that was a great 4-part series, and I think it's clear to everybody why you took place in the national con with that. Really some
Cool.
Fantastic modeling. So in addition to your production skills at New Tracks Live, you're a great modeler, and we thank you for sharing
Thanks.
that series. Next up, we have a new presenter, Scott Eastburn. But before we go to that segment, I'd like to run a little video on our New Tracks newsletter.
Get more New Tracks modeling by reading the monthly Observations newsletter. Each edition of Observations includes exciting articles about modeling shown on the show, other modeling topics and prototypical railroading information. Other articles focus on outstanding model railroaders and new products from a range of suppliers. Don't miss the photos of the popular New Tracks My Build. You can download Observations for free from the New Tracks modeling website. Subscribe so you don't miss an issue.
So next up, we have Scott Eastburn. a new presenter. He's going to show us how he scratch builds a narrow gauge work train. This is going to be a two-part series. And welcome to New Tracks, Scott. And obviously I've seen your slideshow. It's beautiful work, and I'm interested to see the reaction to our viewers. Sure, it'll be positive like mine was. So, Scott.
Thanks, guys. Let's see here. I got to share. You guys all see that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, this whole build began with my pursuit of the NMRA's Master Model Railroader certificates, and in particular the CARS certificate. If you're familiar with that, part of the task is to scratch build, to build 8 cars, but 4 of them have to be scratch built. And so I have a freelanced layout railroad called the Old Slow and Easy, and it has a lumber company on the layout called the Ripcord Coleman Lumber Company, and everything has a story on my layout. And so there was a need for a work train, and so I decided that the 4 scratch build cars were going to be for the Ripcord Coleman Lumber Company. So I started out with simple 3D printed flat car kits from Sean Williams. I don't know if you guys know Sean, but I purchased probably half a dozen of these, and I had them laying around, so I thought I would use them. And this was going to be a 4-car train. The second car I'm going to share with you tonight was actually the first car I built, but that kind of inspired the rest. And so I'm going to share with you the foreman's car, and then I'm also going to share with you the tool car, or the caboose as we call it. Now everything has a story, and so the foreman's car, old Ripcord Coleman, he doesn't take the chance of the management of his log camp to the hired hand. So being a control freak, he decided he wanted his own foreman car built. And so he tasked the shop guys to build him a car so he could go out and be on the road with the crews. And so we started out with a flat car from Sean Williams, just used some scale lumber to build a frame around it so that they would all be the same width and length. I put scribed basswood decks on each one of them. And for the core of the foreman's car, I wasn't going to do an interior on it because it's so small. So I went out to the garage and I grabbed a 2x4 and I cut it in half and then shaped it on my table saw to be the interior core of the flat car. Brought that back into the train room, attached it to the flat car frame, on top of the flat car frame. And I'm constantly wandering the aisles of Hobby Lobby while my wife is looking for other things. And in their dollhouse section, I found this Mayberry Street wainscoting. And it's just a scribed sheet, with what you see there on the left. The boards on it are about they're about a scale 8 inches. And so it's a $1.99 for like a 3.5 inch by 12 foot or 12 inch piece of this stuff. So I pick it up whenever they have it in stock. And I thought, well, this would be good use for this little project. So I use this siding, and it's a little bit odd because it's 8 inch. The boards are about 8 inches wide, and there's like a 1 inch gap in between each board. So it just looks like it's kind of haphazardly thrown together. So I put that siding on the sides, and then use some chipboard for the roof. I love using this chipboard stuff for the roof because you can score it in the middle and fold it, and it just works great. So I installed the roof. Here you can see what the ends look like with that wainscoting, that dollhouse wainscoting. Added some wood trim underneath to just dress it up a little bit. Now this is the foreman's car, so we're going to spend a little money on this car, so it's going to be a little neater than the others. The second image is just showing you the frame and how I had to carve out the openings for the coupler pockets. And then I just took my X-Acto knife and a dental pick and scribed board lines and nail holes along it all the way around. And then I just used some light brown India ink stain and stained it, built a Z-brace door. The little doorknob there, if you go down the necklace bead aisle of Hobby Lobby, they've got all kinds of little pins and things on their aisles. And so these are like an antique bronze ball with a long pin underneath it. And so I buy these you can get them like 50% off. You spend about $2, you get about 30 of them. And they work great for O-scale doorknobs. They have them in these round balls, and they also have flats. So I pick up a packet or two every time I'm in there. And so that little doorknob is just something a girl would make a necklace out of. I added a Grant Line smokestack because in this work car, it's going to have heat. On the end, I framed in a window. Again, the core is solid, so you're not going to see into the car. So I just put a red curtain. The red curtain is just craft crepe paper, the stuff you string up at your kids' parties, and framed in the window. And I stained the wood deck just a green India ink. I moved on to the roof, and I added the shingles here on this are better than scale models, saber-tooth shingles. Glued those on with canopy glue, started to weather them a bit, and then also bent them up and kind of weathered them a little bit. Added a Grant Line step just on the one side by the door because old Ripcord doesn't want people climbing up on his car. In that image to the right, just put some railings, just using phosphor bronze wire bent railings to get up and into the car. That little green box is a place for all the work crew to drop their time cards off at the end of the day. As we get a little further, you'll see I put a little sign on that. So when you finished your day work, you filled out your time card, dropped it in the box on the foreman's car, and you get paid the next day. I custom printed decals on my computer. I have a Canon printer that I can print decals on. I can do everything but white. I had created this logo for the rest of the lumber company, the freight cars and things like that that'll be attributed to it. And so I just repurposed them for the work car. And every car in this train will have decals that I custom printed. And so the foreman's office is on the side. My grandfather worked years and years ago. He's since passed away. He worked for the Weyerhaeuser Timber Company in Oregon, and he was a heavy diesel mechanic. And he passed away at 72. So the car number is significant because it's how old my grandfather was when he passed away. And so you see the car with the decals on each side. Did the same thing on each end. You can see the time card slot there now has a sign on it. And then on the end of the car, I put a brake wheel on there. The brake wheel is just out of my scrap box, but underneath the brake wheel, the frame or the base for it is actually you know how when you buy a brand new 9-volt battery, they come with those plastic things stuck to the top of them. Well, I took one of those off and used my Dremel and ground it down to make it look like some sort of a base. Then used a piece of wire, and then the cast on the side frame it's a ratchet. I think I got that off of Etsy somewhere. It's got KD number 158 couplers on it, and then the red box is the power. This is you'll see in part 2. I built a dynamo car that goes right behind this one in the train. And once you get up to the camp, they can hook the dynamo car up to Ripcord's car, and he'll have power inside his little foreman's office. And so that's just piece of wood with some phosphor bronze bent for hinges, and a couple of those pins that you'll find on the jewelry aisle of Hobby Lobby, where you'd hook up the wires. So in this build, all the scratch built supplies was 2 pine blocks just from the garage. I just picked up a couple of scrap pieces of 2x4, the chipboard roof, all the scale wood for the frame, the card box, the electrical base, all that kind of stuff was just scraps. And then the dollhouse siding from Mayberry, some .020 brass wire, and then anywhere where I needed like the hinges, that's actually foil tape. You can get, most of the hardware stores will have it, Home Depot, foil tape that you'll see in air conditioning units. That stuff is great for making different kind of hinges and stuff because it's got a self-adhesive back and you can cut it to any shape. It takes dental pick really nicely to make little indentations. You'll see that even more on the next car I'll show you. Just in little small metal pins and different things. I love to just look around the house and see what I can use to make something out of. And then I obviously use some Grant Line parts. The wheels are KD number 300s and the couplers are 156s. It's got some lead weight in the car frame to give it a little bit more weight. And then the better than scale sawtooth shingles. Again, all based on or built on a Sean Williams flat car. Now here's probably my favorite car in the whole train. And this is the Stubbs tool car. And this is kind of what started the whole project. My grandfather was a heavy diesel mechanic, and so he would have been the guy that would have been the tool man, the repair guy on the work train. And you'll see a figure that I painted for this car. My grandfather was missing his index finger on his right hand. And so this figure you're going to see, he's called Stubbs because I cut the finger off of Stubbs to model after my grandfather. But again, I started with just one of these Sean Williams flat car frames, built up the frame on both sides. A previous project, I had a Bachmann ON30 passenger car that I wanted to shorten. So I cut a chunk out of it. And that's what you see there, that remaining chunk. I had that laying around. And as I started to build this, I'm like, I can probably use that for something. And so I grabbed that little piece of passenger car, decided that would be kind of the basis for this car. You'll see a little bit later, this car is numbered 1/6 because that piece is exactly 1/6 of a Bachmann stock passenger car. So I took that piece of car, put it on top of the flat car base, trimmed some wood on both ends to, I just would glue a piece of 1x6 or something on each end and then carve it and sand it to, so it followed the contour to kind of close in the roof. Again, scribed wood on the deck. I said that I like to look around the house and find things. Well, Stubbs's work car's got to have a stove in it. And so I had a box full of ballpoint pens laying around. And on the very bottom of that stove that you see on the left-hand side, I had this pen that had this cool little engraving on it. So I started there and I just broke apart a bunch of ballpoint pens and then glued them together and painted them. And it looks like a reasonable stove. Somebody in the shop would have just cobbled together to put something to keep this car warm on the road. Painted it up and installed it in the car. Hand carved the sideboards on the passenger car, started adding molding, added some fresh windows on the inside.
Hey, Scott.
Yep.
We're going to have to pause here and continue this next week from this point on. I'd like to give everybody a chance to ask some questions here before we move on. Does anybody have any questions on that? And we can start on the second car next week. If we need to go to a three-part series, we can do that as well. But does anybody have any questions for Scott on his
Yeah, no problem.
construction?
Yeah, Scott, have you already submitted your SOQ for the CARS AP certificate?
Oh yeah, yep. I've already received this certificate. This was one of the first. Actually, this was one of the first 2 certificates I earned.
Awesome, nicely done.
Yeah, the whole ensemble is quite striking. Your first slide is just beautiful work.
Right.
And like I say, if necessary, we'll go to three parts. But so thank you for presenting this evening, and we'll look forward to the continuation next week. Okay. Next up, we have our narrow-minded segment, and by Steve Sherill, and we have a guest presenter, Greg Cassidy, as well. But before we do that, it's sponsored by Carroll Creek Designs.
Carroll Creek Design Group is an innovative new model railroad supplier with products for all scales. The Carroll Creek team uses advanced processes, including resin and filament 3D printing and laser engraving and cutting. These tools enable us to produce a range of products. We produce different rolling stock and motive power models in multiple scales. We are narrow-minded and focus on narrow gauge and unique backwards models. We have a great selection of ON30, ON18 and HON3 products. Our product range includes complete kits, ready-to-run models, and detail parts. In addition to our products, we are available for custom design, 3D printing, and laser cutting. See our products on our webpage at the QR code. We look forward to meeting you.
Well, next up, we have narrow-minded, which is a focus on narrow gauge, and it's the evening shows sort of on narrow gauge. This is a segment hosted by Steve Sherill, and we're going to feature youth in model railroading, and then Greg is going to go to the Timonium show, is my understanding. So, Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Last week, we kind of reviewed the micro meet in Ransom, West Virginia, on January the 18th. We showed a lot of the micro layouts and a lot of the attendees. One of the layouts we missed was a layout. If you want to show that, show the picture. Thank you. One of the ones we missed was one that I made especially for kids. As you can see here, it's a Thomas the tank engine. It's one of the phases of the Thomas where they used slotted tracks so that the engines wouldn't go off the rails. I actually painted this up, painted all the cars, and battery powered that so it would have reverse. The stock locomotive did not have reverse, it just went around in a circle. It could then be controlled, the speed and the direction. So after I put the scenery down, and I tried to use the same techniques I would on a larger layout, detailing it somewhat so that the kids could play with it and do with it what they wanted. So if you show the second slide, here are the children that this layout ended up with. This is George Sarah's grandchildren, and George is an ON30 modeler who attended the meet. And I asked him and his wife, Greta, that they would take this and give this to their children. And later I got a call at home thanking me very much for this. And you can just see from the looks on their faces how much they're enjoying this. So this is just one of the things that you can do to enhance children's participation in building trains and enjoying layouts. So I already know that they have moved the trees around. They've created it exactly the way they want it to be. So that was kind of interesting. So now, Greg, if you want to go ahead and start with the timonium.
All right, thank you, Steve. As many of you know, the Grayscale Model Train Show is held in Timonium 3 times a year. And for the last 4 years, New Tracks Modeling has had a presence there with their scholarship table for as long as they've been doing it. And Steve and I share the duties of hosting that table. This shows it Friday morning. The Model Railroad Club that I'm involved in also usually has sales tables there. And since we have so many, we can get in early Friday morning for the setup. So I was able to set up the New Tracks table in the center hall, which is where most of the organizations have their tables before anyone else had gotten in there. Now, this was our club's table, and we had an unusually large number of donations and consignments that we were selling this time. And I love getting in there early Friday morning. You can really see the place empty. And a little later, when you see it filled up, you'll see what a change that is. Now, on Saturday morning, before the show had opened, but when all the vendors were there, I was at our sales table, and Charlie Roche, Master Model Railroader, who is the superintendent of the Carolina Piedmont Division, came by the sales table and said, "Greg, I've been meaning to see you. I've seen you on New Tracks a number of times." He watches it off and on. And he said, "Is New Tracks going to have a table here?" And I said, "Yeah, Steve's working it today." So I brought him on over and managed to get a picture of all 3 of us. Charlie was there working with the NMRA table, a little local divisional table or regional table. And then on Saturday, since Steve was running the table, he had brought in his micro layout here and set it up to attract people to the table. And that way you can tell them about the scholarship program. And it especially brings over a lot of families and children who want to see it. And you can see here a close-ups of a few of the buildings that he has on it and all of the different cars and critters that he had brought along. And I know some of these are printed by Carroll Creek. I don't know how many. And this shows it running. And I also want to point out, this is dead rail. So it just kept running and running. Battery seemed to last all day. And then this shows the entire show on Saturday morning after they let all the attendees in. You can see how crowded it gets. Now, there are 3 halls. This is only one of the 3 halls. This is the South Hall. And then there's the Center Hall and the North Hall. And then on Sunday morning, with Steve gone and his micro layout gone, I set up the television. I ran into a little problem. The batteries that we carry in a bag had decided to explode. And so fortunately, the tool guy at the show carries AAA batteries. So I picked up some new batteries and was fortunate to get the TV working. And we're here among all the other organizations. You have tourist railroads here and authors and other organizations. So we fit right in with those. And then in the North Hall, they have a lot of modular layouts set up. Now, someone who's on the show tonight and is a somewhat regular attender is Jeff Peck. Now, Jeff had his own table, and he was putting together these little Kato mini dioramas. And you might wonder, well, why does he have so many of those? Well, Jeff has gotten together with the county that I'm in, which is Montgomery County, and they're going to be putting on a little promotion down at the B&O Silver Spring Station, which is owned by Montgomery Preservation. And what we've done is set it up so that 10 families have registered, and they'll come in on March 8th, and the mini dioramas are already built, and the children will get to decorate them. And Jeff and a couple of us from the club are bringing in all of the materials that they'll need. And once they've decorated them, we'll hook them all together, just as you see here, in some form of a layout like this. And then we'll run trains on it. And after it's over, the kids get to take those, plus the little booklets that come with them, home. And it's a way to get smaller children interested in model railroading. And I think that's all I have for you, Steve. You want to add anything to what I was saying there?
Yeah, go back to the mini dioramas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kato has a program where they're making these available to groups to help children. I think just to introduce them into being a part of a layout, as well as teaching them how to decorate and landscape these things. Now, here is a situation where, rather than have the kids put this together and wait for the glue to dry and all that, they're going to be presented with the opportunity to go ahead and begin landscaping these. And I think, what do you have? 16 here, I believe. And each child will have one, and then they'll get to take it home, and hopefully they will then be a part of a mini diorama group that could get together. You know, you only need, I believe it's 8 of these to make a circle, and they could have their own groups get together. But since they're all coming from probably Montgomery County anyway, they're going to be some of them in the same schools. Now, I believe Winchester Model Railroad Club is going to do the same thing. And so they can now see what it looks like when they're make a layout. Now, they had no power to operate anything on here. And I don't know if, Greg, if you're going to have a transformer hooked up and run something at the station or not. I mean, that certainly would be something that would further the interest. But
yes, I'm not sure about that either. Jeff, if you're able to jump in and tell us, are we going to have power on these?
Is Jeff here?
He was earlier. He may not be now. I believe we're going to have power because he had talked about how we would be able to run trains once they were finished decorating them. And we're making the landscaping simple for them. We'll have trees and grass mats and stuff that they can glue on, and it'll just be like another one of your projects that the kids are familiar with doing in school.
Jeff Jordan is a member of the Winchester Model Railroad Club. It's going to have the same type of meet where they're going to have children at their at when's your show?
That's going to be on March 15th, Saturday, March 15th, at the Moose Lodge in Winchester, Virginia. And we have begun to promote this in our announcements for the train show. And we'll have several people there to assist kids in scenicking their layout. We also, or their mini diorama, and we intend to have one set up and operating at the show as well. Just to mention also, you're correct that Kato makes these available to clubs and museums and the like. And to get it, all you need to do is go to the Cotto webpage and get their general contact phone number and call them up. There's no link or order procedure on the webpage. You call their contact number, tell them that you're interested in this program, and they will take your order. And at $4 a piece and no charge for shipping. And they got me, a batch of them in a week's time.
Now,
And I see Jeff's here now. Jeff, do you know if we're going to have power when we put ours together?
Yes, we will.
Fantastic.
Are you looking for helpers to help the children decorate these and landscape them, or are you just going to let them freelance and do what they want? Give them some hints. Is that what are adults going to be there to help them?
Yes, I'm going to be there. Matt Chabarro is going to be there. Greg is going to be there, and some others from Rockville are going to be there as well.
Will you let volunteers?
Absolutely.
Come and help?
Absolutely.
Because I think I'll probably go to Winchester and help if they'll let me.
Yep. We're planning on that. And we also plan to have several members available to help. And also my wife, who is not a member of the club, but has got a background in early childhood education and does a lot of arts and crafts, has said she's going to come and make sure we keep it at a kid's level.
No rivet counters.
We can't have any fun. That's what you mean? Well, the Timonium show is a very old show. I believe it started like in 75, maybe.
Howard Zane put it together. And ironically, when he first had planned it, he was going to build a building specifically for the Model Railroad Show. And it was going to be in Burtonsville, Maryland. But the land deal fell through, and he rented the Timonium Fairground building, and it's been there ever since.
Now, there was a very large crowd there on Saturday. And, I never realized how large a crowd it was until I looked at the ATM machine, and there were 21 people waiting in line to get to the ATM machine. And they ran out of money for the machine, and they had to come and service it. So as soon as they announced that it was back in service, you could see people running up there again to get money. So that's always a good sign.
Yeah. I think it's great you guys are supporting the youth, because the youth are the future of the hobby. And coincidentally, after our closing, the Caboose will feature the DARE program, which was extensive number of model railroads in a single old schoolhouse, and takes children every day in there, and variety of scales. I think you'll find it fascinating. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
well, I think it's all we have tonight, Tom.
Well, great job, and appreciate you guys being on the show and supporting New Tracks. Next up, we have a tradition on the show, the closing with Father Ron, and then we'll move to the video, The Caboose. As I indicated, the Caboose video is from the National Pittsburgh Narrow Gauge Convention, and it's one of two videos we have left from the show. Phil did extensive video recording of all the layouts that Jeff, myself, and I visited. So I think you'll find this very interesting, the DARE. We call it the DARE layout. Phil will explain. But first, Father Ron, appreciate it.
Creator of the world, as modelers and makers, we have come to understand the intricacy and beauty of our world. We thank you for the vision and the artistry you have given us. Continue to bless us with your creative spirit. Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Father Ron, and we look forward to your modeling. I'll keep goading you on that. And next, in closing the show, is our caboose, Phil.
Thanks, Tom. So I think most of you who have been on the show for a while may have remembered we had the representative from the DARE Club, which is there in the Pittsburgh area. The DARE, D-A-R-E, if you're familiar with the DARE to keep kids off of drugs, that's actually where this originated from. It was started by a local policeman who was the local DARE officer, and he thought that having a activity like this for kids would really fit well to give them something. So now we'll go ahead and play a little bit more detail about, I think they had 7 different layouts, but it was a very interesting area in an old schoolhouse that was now a community center there in their local area. So here we go.
The caretakers of these layouts spend most of their time maintaining them. They let the children run the trains with no fear. If they break or damage something, they simply repair it or replace it. They take donations. They run a little hobby shop downstairs, where if they can't put anything on the layout, they resell this used equipment and raise funds for the program.
Look at that.
Pittsburgh area, of course, you've got steel mills. It's an open hearth blast furnace.
Tom, is this open?
Say that again, please.
Is it open every day for the kids to have access, or just certain days?
No, I believe so. It's after school program, and there were several children there when we were visiting.
Who you'll get to meet in a moment. Yeah, it was most impressive. So this was kind of like the first room had multiple, it looked almost like layouts that had been donated. They were kind of individual, but they were, multiple here in this one room. And you can see they have low-cost air conditioning there.
Power of train, right there. They have some sort of program where they start you off in another room with once you establish certain skills, you can move to the next layout, This is the largest layout in the building. This is an HO. This is what I found most interesting with this. G scale. These are massive locomotives in there.
Yeah, basically this is a big HO shelf layout, extended link shelf layout.
Hey, there's a guy.
Handsome guy, I'll tell you. Smart too, I hear.
Yeah, old kid.
Look how large this HO layout is, though. And this was a donation.
What a wonderful thing after you can no longer use your layout to have it passed along in this fashion.
Yeah. These guys donate a lot of their time. The fellow you see there, he was one of the founders, one of the first people, one of the guys that started it, came up with the concept. It's been here for quite some time, Phil. Do you recall? Did he say over 10 years? Something?
Yeah, I think it's been over 10 years, he said. It's been quite a few years.
Building. Still some layouts we haven't seen. There seems to be layouts in every room.
Yeah, there's I think there's one more little section after this, one more room.
Wow.
So is the idea of operations also introduced to the kids?
They didn't indicate that.
Okay.
Hi, Ethan.
This is an OG's layout. There's O and 3 here.
O and 30 in the middle? Or O and 3?
O and 3, the narrow gauge.
Oh,
This is the general. This is the inner. This is the outer. There's actually a point here, and it goes across and it goes to here.
Oh, wow.
And then there's this bridge over here that can come out and go in, and then it would go all the way around here to service the
Oh,
snow.
you put that piece in and it goes all the way around. Wow. Is this your favorite railroad?
Yeah, this is my favorite one. It's not based on any Pacific.
But it's big. That's why we all like O-scale, because it's big.
So here's the main station. Here's the middle station over there.
I can see her running the NMRA
Wow.
in 20 years.
Transfer station for the O gauge and the narrow gauge.
Yep.
Here's a big town.
You gotta love the enthusiasm.
The engine over there. Being running. This one, it's not working right now. If it was, I would run it.
That's good.
There's a yard up here. There's a central caboose over here, and there's a dino actually here.
The diner, I see
And
that.
that's actually a rail car.
Oh, that's excellent.
Forwarded into a dino.
You see that tin plate everywhere now. The tin plate? Yeah. You see it all the time.
And
See up
gas
along the
station?
top.
Yeah.
There's Main Street.
Cool.
Trains up high.
Well, thank you. I really
Shelves.
appreciate you showing it to us. That was very nice.
Can you make it go instead of getting it in the field?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Oh, we're going backwards. Oh, here we come. And you're running it at scale speed too. That's very good.
I also got the jet walk running. I could try to get 6.
Turn that darn bell off. Wow.
And if you come over here, you can actually see the interior of the station. I was showing you to also service the town from that line. You can see
Wow.
the interior where the train passes.
Yep, very nice. They're all coming together. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop now. You want to say goodbye? Bye.
Here's the hobby shop. Here's the collection. There's one of the founders. Brian. They welcome visitors, so if you're ever in Pittsburgh,
Yeah, it was interesting. I had a talk with the blonde young man's mom, and she was really thankful for having a place to take kids where they weren't sitting on screens all day. A lot of concern about how you raise kids in today's world, and having this available seemed to be a godsend for parents.
Great.
well, that was just really great. And we have one more video left from the Pittsburgh show, and then we'll need videos for the Caboose. So any of our viewers on live Zoom or on YouTube, contact me or go on one platforms and see if you can be featured on our Caboose or on the show itself. Well, it was a great show. It highlighted a lot of scratch building. In the future, I have some major manufacturers coming on to talk about new product releases. Bachman will be on, Broadway Limited, and a couple others. So my drive here is to feature major manufacturers and technology, what I call the cottage industry, which has been the foundation of the hobby since its inception. People like Carroll Creek Designs and such, who don't necessarily have the funds to do advertising. You know, we reach, for example, over 8,000 people with our newsletter, just as an example. And every live New Track show, we get between 500 and 1,000 viewers after a week or two on the reruns. So we have a pretty good platform that we just want to grow. And I encourage our viewers to present on our live show. Today alone, we had 3 new participants who had never been on our show before, and they did excellent presentations, and most of them have part 2s, maybe even a part 3. So the show is going in the right direction, and I want to thank the team that's behind the show, because it wouldn't be possible to run it without people like Pat Rivard and Phil Edholm and Earl and just on and on. There's a big crew that makes this happen. So appreciate it all. And thank you, Father Ron, again for the closing. And as we say, that's all, folks. Thank you.